Hey, hi, how is everybody? You can tell that this is the default slide font from Google Slides, so you can tell it's like I was really thoughtful about it. But today I'm going to talk to you about based rollups and why I think they're beneficial for the Ethereum ecosystem. When I say based, you say rollups. Based, based. Yes, this is the future of Ethereum. This is what we're here for. So Ethereum has a composition problem. Right now, the way we've implemented L2s onto the L1 in this design, we can't permissionlessly or synchronously make atomic transactions. So the effect of this for many of you may be, I have a bunch of tokens on Optimism, I have a bunch of tokens on Inc. And so you have to have all of these different little ecosystems that you're moving across. You might think, no, Joe, that's stupid. You don't know. We have bridges. I can move in between all these different L2s pretty seamlessly. But you'd be wrong. And that's because we're treating tokens as an atomic unit. And that's kind of weird to think about because we're really assuming the premise of how people are going to use Ethereum in the future. It's like this was the design of Bitcoin. This is what gave rise to Ethereum. Bitcoin was a network, or is a network, and functionally very decentralized, very good design, but it really only does one thing, which is track a ledger. And we built Ethereum initially on this promise that we were going to have a Turing-complete layer. And so we could build all of these different applications. When DeFi allowed you to have this kind of permissionless finance layer and infinite composition. So something like DeFi Saver, Aave, Compound, Uniswap, I was able to compose a transaction that synchronously went between all of these different ecosystems. And since then, since the L2 roadmap, we haven't been able to do that. We've had to have these isolated silos of individual applications, a deployment of Uniswap on Inc., a deployment of Uniswap on Optimism, a deployment of Uniswap on any of these other L2s. And so I think that we're really just assuming the premise. We think that the only thing people are going to do with Ethereum is tokens and swaps. But I think a better analogy is to think about the initial design of the internet. People saw email as being this really killer application because people were sending each other letters. And they thought, oh, I can electronically send letters between people. And at that time, if you were to say the main use case for the internet is going to be email, people might have agreed with you. And if it weren't for better engineers who designed the system to work on packets, we might be sending emails as our like atomic unit of the internet. And I think that's a very similar design to using tokens as a way to compose across these different L2s. And so I think, in short, interop should be about shared state. And so this will enable a lot of new and interesting use cases. And so this is why based rollups are the solution. They allow you to have synchronous execution across multiple L2s in a single L1 block. And that will allow you to compose applications that are deployed on Unichain or on Optimism or Inc. in a single transaction. So imagine that like the golden era of DeFi, when we were doing things in Aave and Uniswap and Compound all in a single transaction, we'll now be able to do that again. And based rollups are a way also of sharing sequencing with the Ethereum L1. And the negative aspect of that is a lot of these L2s are they're sequencing it themselves. And so they have to kind of give up some notion of responsibility over that state. And lastly, we're going to be able to have a single instance of an application that serves all of Ethereum. So this also is, so how does a based rollup work? Essentially, at the core of it, there's a lot of things that people talk about in regards to based rollups. They'll talk about pre-confirmations and MEV resistance and you know, any number of other things. But at its core is outsourcing L2 sequencing to the L1. There's a couple of different strategies on how to do that. And it's like the decentralization of sequencing responsibilities. So right now you have L2s, like Inc., like Optimism, and they have a centralized sequencer, and that centralized sequencer sequences each block for the rollup. And this based rollups basically creates a diaspora of the sequencing, and so we'll have multiple sequencers and an ordering mechanism for how we select a sequencer. So I think the reason that based rollups are going to win is that we won't have to deploy the same app 50 times to 50 different chains. So if you take it as an example for Inc. When we were first creating it, one of the things we're like, what do we need? First thing we need is a DEX, right? So we need a DEX, so we get a deployment of Uniswap. Okay, next thing we need is like a lending market. So we'll get like a deployment of a lending market. And if you go to each L2, that's the first thing that basically everybody asks when you're interacting with an L2 for the first time is, what's the main DEX and what's the lending market? And in reality, there's no reason for these to exist in separation. That's not really how load balancing works in the real world. And so this is like very distinct instances. So yeah, we're going to be able to load balance these applications in a single rollup. So imagine that Unichain is the source that we use for swaps on Uniswap. Imagine that Aave were to deploy their own L2. Oh, cool. I got 10 minutes. I thought I would be much shorter than this. So we're going to reduce fragmentation. So I think that you see all of this liquidity fragmentation. It's everywhere. We have really shallow liquidity on some chains and really deep liquidity on other L2s. But in reality, we should really concentrate that all in one place to produce the best prices. And that's the thesis. And lastly, we're going to have this user experience where we're not really bridging, where we're making single transactions that are able to transact across all the L2s at one time. And lastly, this is my thesis. Nobody tell Justin Drake that I'm making this pitch right now, because he thinks that we should stake Ethereum to become an L2 sequencer. But I think L2s have this main problem inherently where they have a token that's almost useless because gas for L2s are paid in Ethereum. And so we're giving away like almost all of the control to Ethereum. But my thesis is that we should stake L2s and or stake L2 tokens. So in this case, it would be OP or Uni or Inc. And we let that token represent the economic security of the network. And yeah, and so that's my thesis. I think I'm going to open it up for questions. No. Wait, you mean Inc. or you mean like? So it would work like this. An individual or like an L2 that conforms to based rollups, well then this is L1 sequences the L2, but not in an explicit manner. It's implicit in that we could allow individual validators in the network to sequence blocks. And so technically there's a difference between it being an explicit requirement and implicit, if that makes sense. Does it? No? Okay, shoot. All right, let me take another swing. So the L2 would require that you stake L2 tokens to then sequence the L2 block on L1. And so in this same way that it's optional, you're not required to sequence an L2 block if you're a validator on the L1. Optionally, you can. And it makes a difference in hardware requirements, network requirements, et cetera. Sorry? Who? Yes, yep.
Yeah. The first question is
Hang on.
So first question is like you're pitching for the L2 token. So each kind of sub network or L2 put in their own tokens, right? Then from validator's point, isn't pricing extremely difficult as opposed to staking ETH? Because if L2 all staking ETH, that's all same pricing. But if run like lots of like 10 different like chains all staking each L2 tokens, it works well with economic incentives because like some super chain, but like I wonder if that makes it difficult for L1 validator to say which one is worth sequencing, because some of the, I think, smaller roll-up, their token might tank, right? Then in that case, do they suddenly pick up the price change, or this is not worth sequencing? So just wondering what's the complexity if you go for staking.
Yeah, I think they would. They would have reduced economic security on those L2s, and I think generally the L2 token will and should be reflective of the value that it's securing. And so if you have a very valuable L2, you're going to also have a very valuable L2 token. Sure. Go
ahead. I'm understanding that any or most of the L2s could become a base rollup if they decentralize the sequencing, right? What is stopping them? Like, why is Optimism or other L2s not doing that quickly?
That's an excellent question, and I think that the core, like the main piece, is that based rollup designs are almost like theoretical right now. They're not really. We're really bad at engineering in Ethereum, but really good at research, and this is an instance of that. There are some live-based rollups. No one has made a conversion from a rollup that was, let's say, Optimism or Arbitrum 2 based. Sorry, what was the second part?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that there is some work to do. Obviously.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh, also they have to give up MEV. So like right now, sequencers kind of enjoy this situation where they're the only entity that can produce a block, which means they have fee revenue, and then they also have MEV revenue, and that's like pretty difficult to separate people from. Yeah. Oh, right there. And handing this microphone around is hard.
Well, the most don't capture MEV, right? But they earn on priority fees.
So sequencers are definitely doing MEV, but they also have like the fees, transaction fees.
My question that I wanted to ask was about what do you think on will it gravitate towards one big based rollup, because liquidity is like a black hole, so the biggest. It will be a power law, or what do you? What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I mean, I hope that liquidity concentrates to like. I was talking about it last night. I think theoretically that there are some instances where it might not, but I think ideally it is concentrated in one place. And the reason why is that will produce the best prices for everybody. Right now, anytime you make a swap, it's going through a series of arbitrages across a series of L2s, series of L1s. It would be ideal if you could get, let's say 99% of the best price by swapping directly.
But the liquidity ideally will be on the L1, and then.
Oh no, this would be on an L2.
Why would the liquidity be on an L2?
Well, this is like presuming that we're going to scale apps this way. That there would be like some roll up that is like Unichain, where there's a majority of the liquidity. There are designs to have interactivity between the L2s and the L1s in some of these based rollup transactions, but other ones have designs that are only cross L2, and L1 is kind of like a longer leg for them.
Okay. Thanks.
I think the problem is the security of the challenge period for optimistic rollups. For things that are like validiums, it's much simpler.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everybody coming out.